You got to understand, Mike played hockey.
Mm-hmm.
His dialogue is hip checks and high sticking, right? That's your go-to for most conversations.
Yeah. Unmoderated
violence.
No. Shouts.
We love that in you, Mike. Welcome to the Marketing Team of One podcast, where we have conversations about the issues one-person marketing teams face when trying to meet their goals with limited time and budgets. Now here's your hosts, Eric and Mike.
Somebody came to me and said, hey, we should be trying more video to promote our business. I would probably panic a little bit. I mean, or I'd be like, ugh, that sounds like a lot of work. Mm-hmm. There might be a lot of people in my shoes where they know video is important, but it just seems intimidating, scary, or just like a lot of work.
What's really cool now is that the more genuine and less produced video you make, the more you connect with your audience and the higher impact it has. So what that means is that the barrier is much lower than it's ever been.
Yeah.
Yes, that means that everybody jumps in and there's more competition around it, but that also means, you know, the statistics around how effective video are off the charts. I mean, it seems to be provide the lowest friction to learn the most about something, whatever it is. I don't know about you, but like, I'm on YouTube all the time watching stuff. And it's not just shorts or TikTok or things like that. I'm watching longer form stuff because it just provides a dense, you know, you get to learn so much in one sitting from watching video. And it really can be a super effective way to do marketing. I don't want to preach on how great video is for marketing because go research it. You'll find all kinds of amazing statistics.
There might be some stuff on the internet about it, right?
I think so. I think YouTube's like the second most visited website after Google. I mean, it's really popular. So, but what's funny is
search engine.
The searchability on YouTube is its superpower. But there's all the different platforms have their own superpower. I mean, it's really and you get to choose. You know, the big five. I would say you're talking. You know, the biggest would be YouTube, but you've also got TikTok. That's also massive. You've got Instagram, which has Reels, which is really powerful, which you could argue is part of Facebook, which is the other one. And then you've got LinkedIn, which is the lowest amount of people on it. But I would dare argue that depending on where you're at and what you're trying to promote, could be the most effective platform.
If you visit LinkedIn daily, there is a serious lack of content being fed into LinkedIn, but I also see that they are trying to promote more, create their own video type reels and everything. And if there's only a select few doing that means that there's more opportunity for you to kind of...
The past 3 years I've gone to VidCon, and it's all about video content creation, VidCon. The coolest thing about platforms like TikTok are its discoverability. And it's kind of the powerful aspect of the algorithm that TikTok provides is probably one of the most compelling things for marketers. Now, is TikTok the perfect platform for your product or service? Might be, might not.
Because if you're trying to sell to me, you're not reaching me on TikTok because I'm not there.
Yeah, exactly. Right? And that's why you got to kind of study the platform. It's funny because it's in there, but it's by far TikTok's the youngest.
Yeah.
LinkedIn is the oldest. Yep. Facebook is near LinkedIn. It's one of the older platforms as well, but also very powerful because it actually has more people on Facebook, I think, than anybody.
Yeah.
It's the largest of all platforms.
If I was a client coming to you right away and it said, hey, you know what, Eric, I know you know a lot about videos. I want to figure out kind of video strategies, or what would you ask me?
Well, of course, as we've preached on the podcast every episode, possibly, know your audience.
Yep.
Figure out where they're at, look at their age demographics, and look at what their behaviors are. Understand that video is, across all the platforms, one of the most compelling pieces of content you can create by far. I think HubSpot did a study where they realize that it beats blogs, it beats all, content writing and
all the other things that take a lot of time.
Yeah.
Right. So the time thing is kind of not as big of an issue as maybe I would make it out to be. Right. Yep.
I think too, the other thing to understand is like making videos is a totally different process mentally, and you should try to figure out how to make it fit into your, I call it lifestyle. What's the lowest amount of impact it will have on your lifestyle? So don't choose something that's, you know, oh, I got to get all the best equipment and I got to get a team and I got to, you know, look at what realistically you have to work with as far as your resources. And that includes your time and your equipment, and then make your decisions based on that. The nice thing is that a lot of the providers produce a lot of tools that make it easier and easier and easier. And so that really does help. As far as equipment is concerned, the bar is super low. Like the newest iPhones, even the older iPhones going back to 12s and 11s, anything. Those are way fine. You know, you don't need to go invest in a bunch of stuff unless you're going to amp up your production levels and do like a 3-camera shoot, you know, like we're doing here. Yeah. That's like the next level up. The one thing that people don't realize that is so critical to video is audio.
Yeah, right.
It's funny because people just assume that if you're outside, that's the biggest struggle, or you're working around noisy equipment. Invest in a microphone, or invest in a sound system that captures it and isn't distracting, because people will turn off a video if the audio isn't good, or it's annoying, or there's a sound in the background. They're gonna click it off immediately.
It was Wistia's website. I thought was one of the best examples of. They showed so many, like, at different levels and everything. And I remember one of their things was they said you could do a simple shoot with 2 iPhones, one to record and then for the video, and one to do the audio. And if you get the microphone close enough to the people's mouths, you can get decent coverage, because that's how sophisticated these devices are. You probably want to try things on a budget first just to see if it even works.
Yeah, it's great advice. Just start small and understand that you can grow into it if you see results, and keep refining your strategies around it.
So you're gathering all your stuff. You're setting a budget, what you're willing to spend and can spend on this thing. We've considered the camera, probably the most important thing, right? Closely followed by audio, right? Are there any other things we should be considered, like to make a good video up front?
I just think the last thing is just, we're going real basic here, just consider the lighting. Not to say you have to go invest in lighting, but just make sure it's something you're paying attention to, because there is a lot of videos out there that I see that are extremely dark and are hard to see. So if you're shooting outside, it shouldn't be a consideration at all. Just make sure you're not in direct sunlight and you're squinting, and you can't, you need to make sure that it's controlled in some level. So just consider it. If you're shooting outside, go shoot in a shadow. Go shoot on the north side of a building or something like that. That's all.
But I mean, if you're a basement refinishing company and you want to show your process of what you're going on, you probably do need to make sure that you have lighting considered.
Absolutely.
Before you go into it, right?
Yeah. And those are the 3 technical pillars, I would say. Those are the very basics. Make a plan for your video. Outline it somehow. And even if it's a 2-minute video, have a purpose behind it and have a very clear direction in what you're trying to highlight, and make sure you optimize for that as much as possible.
What am I outlining here?
Write down what the goal of the video is. Whittle away at that to its bare essence. Go in with a purpose, and what is the main one thing that you can nail down in one sentence? What is the goal of this video?
Yep.
Try to get it to one sentence.
Yeah.
Make sure that you hit all of the main things, and understand that 2 minutes of video, you can say maybe 150 words.
When you say that, and I've heard you say that before, it always just baffles me. I'm like, what? You can't fit 500 words in 30 seconds?
That's how it is all the time. I get, here's our proposed script, or our idea for a script, and it's 2 pages of text.
Yep.
And I'm like, this is great for a 20-minute video. This will be awesome. You got to understand, you got to hook people immediately at the beginning. You have 3 seconds. Some say less than 3 seconds to hook people in, because there's so much competition for our attention at this point. Yes, short form, you need even less time.
when you talk about a goal summed up in one sentence, I'm assuming some of those would sound more like, we want to get people invested in why we exist as a company.
Answer the most common customer questions or problems.
Yeah.
That could be a series of videos.
And even if it's not marketing, but it's more like customer service or to make the customers you have already feel really good about what you're doing, that I think that's gold right there.
What is the most common issues or topics or things that you're constantly repeating, and get those on video somehow? And then there's all kinds of tools where you can either embed them in an email or you can embed them on your website. There's a tool called Video Ask that allows you to have a little Q&A session down there with pre-canned videos, but it's much more compelling. Like it gives you options. You can click on certain topics, and they're just little bite-sized 1 or 2 minute videos that explain. People love behind the scenes stuff, like if you're in manufacturing or food production, like we've done a lot of videos around that. It's fascinating, like how it's made type.
I would love to go to different factory floors like once a month and just see how it all.
Yeah,
it's so fascinating.
It's like this, you get like sucked into the automation process, and it's just kind of hypnotic to watch some of that stuff.
If you have access to a factory floor, just record little snippets of everything and put them out there, because I think there's a lot of people like Eric and I who would love to just see the behind the scenes and how that's made. People see that stuff, and there's so many different ways people interpret that. You wouldn't even consider it, but some people might be looking, is it a safe place to work? Are they taking care of their employees? Are they cleaning the equipment? Like there's all these like wild things that you never even consider as the purpose of the video, but all those ancillary things that come alongside of it are super powerful and compelling to people that you don't even pick up on maybe when you're making the videos. I think getting to that like low friction thing as far as content ideas too, interview customers if they're open to that. They don't have to just put a video testimonial. That's a really nice 2-3 minute thing. You can see a genuine person enjoying, delighted to work with you. There's something super powerful about that. And then also like interviewing, leadership and stakeholders and important people in your business that maybe have influence over an industry. Or I'm just encouraging people, maybe don't write the blog about it. Maybe just film a video about it. Yeah, replace something where you'd write a blog with a interview type thing, or it doesn't have to be super outlined and super structured. You can still convey that same message. I know one person I had talked to a while back, he had replaced writing emails to people who had reached out like with a sales inquiry or something. He just fired up one of those like record your face type things like Loom or something like that. And he would do a custom message to them and embed it so he could send that back to them, and the people would be able to put a face to the name. They'd be able to get an idea of who's this person sound like, what are they, and what would it be like. And I think that's, unless you're a really, really good writer or really good at other stuff, I mean, it's better. Right?
Yeah, it's like that whole thing of like, I can write an email, and then you write it and you're like, that's super funny. And then you get a call like, what's with the email? Like, do you hate me? What did I do to you? Like, and you're like, no, it's a joke. No, I'm saying, come on. Like, but that's hard to do on an email, right? That's very difficult. Now I think you've had a lot of success doing that, where you'll put together a proposal, and ideally you're as entertaining as Mike is. I mean, let's face it. If they're not entertaining or there's a low energy level to it, don't really encourage them to be on camera a lot or do a lot of video editing tricks. We don't have to do anything with you. You're just a sparkly human being. That's just, I'm sure when you get on your Loom and you present your proposals, 100% sign me up, right? They get you get a lot of good comments from people. They're like, oh, thanks for filming a video. Or
every time I do it, I'm so glad you did that. And I think it's because not a lot of people are taking advantage of it. So it's kind of novel, but I also think I do think it goes back to what you're talking about. A lot of people just want to take in the video. They don't necessarily want to read long passages of especially if I'm showing off how to do something. If you can do that in a 2-3 minute video, I mean, I've had some that are like, if I'm explaining something that's a little complicated, it might be like 10 minutes. There's a response to that. And I'm using it more from a communication standpoint, not a marketing or sales.
Right. A lot of people don't listen to their videos. Like, I don't know about you, but you know, when I'm watching a lot of videos, I don't want my wife knowing what I'm watching.
Yep.
Not that it's, you know, but she's like, "Are you watching another marketing video? Like, that is so boring. I'm trying to watch Survivor, man, you know?"
So there's a lot of people just watching video and not even taking in the audio. Like, and you're talking about like reels or stuff like that, where I'm still trying to wrap my head around this, where they've captioned it, like the auto captioning is there, so you get an idea of what's going on without listening.
I would say maybe 50% of the video that I watch is I turn the sound off. Not because of anything more than I just don't want to bother the people around me, you know?
Yeah.
Especially shorts and reels and things like that. It's just people want to read it. And noise can be a pollution. Give a hoot. Don't pollute.
You're building all these things to worry about in my head. Like how can this not be like all consuming?
Well, there is a lot of automation that's out there now. Of course, AI is involved heavily. I don't use it myself, but I want to become a evangelist for Adobe Express because I do think that they have done a pretty good job. Yes, there's a learning curve. No, it's not the perfect solution, but I think it's probably one of the more accessible tools out there for people to use for doing a lot of this. And you can do things like AI will caption it for you and it'll make it fun graphics and you can add icons, and TikTok, even Snapchat. Those platforms allow for so much powerful editing. TikTok, obviously. All those, pocket. Yeah, it's right there in your pocket. And that's probably sufficient for doing a lot of that kind of short form stuff that we're talking about. I mentioned short form, and I'm just in the short form mode because I think there's a stat that said like 60% of the marketing videos produced out there are less than 2 minutes.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that's perfect for every situation. I mean, some things need 10 minutes. Some things need 11 minutes.
But that goes back to the purpose of what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
Right. And knowing that helps set your constraints for, right? We want to educate people about this new product that we have coming out. An 11-minute video is not a good way to do that.
No, not to intro them.
Do you have an in-depth interview with the CEO where they're talking about a big change in the company? You probably don't want to try and get that down to 2 minutes, right?
You'll do a major disservice to your audience.
So knowing the purpose, that goes to the time, but in general, the shorter you can make it more concise, the better, right? Like you don't want to have a lot of filler in there.
Again, we're competing for attention, and these platforms make it so easy to just boom, swipe, you're done. You know, oh, the 2 seconds. You know, that's one of my funniest examples. Is I showed a short form video that was 30 seconds long to somebody to give me some, you know, I want some feedback. Like, how could I make this better? I didn't get to the end of it. I swiped. I'm like, what? Like, I asked you to look at this, and you couldn't even put together the attention span to watch 30 seconds. So I was doing something wrong, I guess. I mean, that's the thing about it is, like I said, you get 1 or 2 seconds at the beginning. You know, some people argue it's even less than 0.7 seconds or something like that. You know, 18 milliseconds. You know, it's a crazy game. I don't want to get on that. You know,
I was going to say I could get very get off my lawn about this. I'm not going to do that. What are the things that you would consider when you are setting up a shot or a collection of shots that you want to put together in this video? Are there some things that you look for in setting that up?
Yeah, I think the one thing is to pay attention to attention span. We just talked about that, and understand that, you know, the platform, or most of the time, people will spend and give attention to things for about 3 to 5 seconds, and then they want something to change. Whether that's adding a graphic in there or whether it's adding B-roll, maybe the audio is consistent over the top or something like that. What I'm getting to is like capture a variety of things that you could put together in that video, that whether it's still imagery that you dwell on for a second or two, hands doing things. Maybe it's super close up. Maybe it's super far away. Maybe it's some drone footage if you're lucky enough.
Like capture way more than you think you'll need.
Yeah.
Right. And so you have more to work with. And
what gives it context? You know, what tells the story even more better than just somebody standing in front of a camera talking.
Yep.
You can have a majority of the videos, somebody just standing in front of your camera talking, but you need to also mix that in with other things.
Put on that art director hat. Like, what are some things that you want to do when you're setting up these shots? If I've never done this before, what are some considerations to get the look right?
Well, I think depending, of course, on the video, if you're just shooting one person, it's nice to, and you're shooting not vertical but horizontal, let's say, because vertical shots I think lend themselves really well to just full on just face or somebody standing there talking, and you can set that up, and usually it's a little bit more dynamic, and those are, you know, maybe if you're doing something where the camera is moving, do a couple of practice sessions first with it, just so you know you're not going to bump into that table or knock over that light, or you've got enough room, or everything in the background. That's the thing that I think people forget about sometimes, is what's in the background, because you may not see it or may not even care that it's there, but there are other people who are part of your audience that are hypersensitive to things, like that light over there is now peeking out over your shoulder, or now there's a bird feather sticking out of your head. Or
what are you looking for? What are you looking to avoid in backgrounds for
good. that? So I first start with compositionally the rule of thirds. So I always like to keep my frame broken up into 3 parts. And usually the face or the head is on one of those axes. Yep. It's either to the right or to the left. And then I consider what's to the side of them, and what's, usually I like to break things up to where there is some angles or some sort of dynamic elements, furniture, window lines, things like that, that point to the face or point to something relevant. You know, when you're doing an interview with somebody, you want to probably put them on one of those thirds, and then you want to have something that's over their shoulder that's not super interesting, and then have some sort of a lighting. Maybe the elements in the background are broken up into halves. So you've got the stuff in the foreground is divided by thirds. The stuff in the background is maybe just this half is the wall and this half is the window.
In some cases, it's better if it's kind of just fades off into the distance and there's nothing competing for the attention. Yeah,
if you've got control over like f-stop or that bokeh effect where you can make the background go into a faded, soft, that's really beautiful stuff. It takes a little bit of extra stuff. You can still do it on your iPhone if you shoot with that higher level. I think it's portrait mode or something like that. No, it's cinematic mode on the video. You can focus on one thing and then everything else kind of blasts out of focus in the background. That really helps people focus in on the face. You want to focus in on faces, obviously. Yeah. If somebody's talking.
Especially if you're doing an interview type thing or something like that.
You can see on these shots when we shoot our video, we isolate the face inside of a blue background that's very plain. But everything else around it is pretty visually stimulating so that it is still interesting. And we do that because when we click back and forth from one camera to the next camera, there's consistency so that when I'm talking here and then I click to the center camera, my head is basically in the same spot compositionally. Yeah. And then I switch back to this camera. It's basically you don't lose contact with my eyes. My eyes don't move from here and then they're over here and then they bounce back over here.
You want to make sure that you're not shooting in front of a bright window.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Lighting is such a consideration. We talked about it earlier, knowing the lighting. But let's say it's in our office here. Like, we don't want to be pointing the camera towards the light, right? We want to actually have the light behind the camera in most cases.
Yeah. Even if you have light behind you, try to overpower it with light in front of the subject behind the camera so that it pops it off of the background as best possible. Another trick, too, is we use something called hair lights, which are just kind of borderline lights, which you can see here, like the edge of my head is lit up to separate it from the background. Same with the edge of your head, is you've got a highlight over here. Maybe that's
more over here.
Your angelic glow. Maybe
it's my aura.
It's your spiritual aura.
I don't know if this physical aura that you've set up matches my actual aura. I know there are people who can see that. If you know somebody, I'd love to know what color aura mine is.
Reach out.
I assume it's a dark blue or something like that.
Does that mean horribly violent or?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know what the colors mean. I just think like if I know
the color.
Rain clouds and but with a hint of
Optimism.
open skies.
So if they're talking and they're talking this direction, you don't want to have the plane or the edge of the composition here and then all this empty. You really want to shift that over so that they're not feeling crowded. You know,
Yeah.
that's maybe simple, but you know, ideally you're shooting with, some people shoot with 2 or 3 lights. You know,
Yeah.
we shoot here, we've got 5 or 6 going. The overhead light makes us, you know, works well with our makeup.
Yep.
We have access to all these LED lights now where you can adjust all the color, make it hot, make it warm, make it purple, make it red. You know, I mean, those can be really fun. You know, you can have a lot of fun with those $50 on Amazon or something.
Yeah.
You could do some really cool things, highlighting, you know, bringing drama to your videos, having a little bit more fun.
What about your subject? You've got it. We're back on this interview thing. Are there things they shouldn't wear?
Do you want the focus to be on the face? I mean, everybody, just by being human beings, we're naturally drawn to looking at people's faces. So we can't turn that off. If you have like a checkerboard shirt or maybe a blue with some
Yeah.
I guess you didn't.
This is my way of asking you, should I be wearing this? This is probably
That's not borderline.
Yeah.
That's borderline. But yeah, back in the olden days, there used to be the issue of like these moire lines where you'd get like a herringbone jacket, and then all of a sudden you'd just see these vibrations of you know, pattern and things like that you definitely are trying to avoid.
I have a couple shirts I've noticed on our Zoom calls that do that quite a bit. So it
that's
still
fun.
is an issue. But yeah,
You're the center of attention then. Nobody can take their eyes off of your shirt.
and not in a good way. Like, what are some tips that you have as far as like collecting all this stuff and finding what's going to be your final
This
video?
is why it's really good to keep your mission statement for the video as short as possible. Go back to that and then use that as a filter to go through all of your content, because I would say that could be the most time-consuming piece of doing any sort of video editing. You know, having to look through 2 hours, you literally have to sit there for 2 hours and watch every second of that video to make sure you're not missing something. You can, you know, tools as far as software, Premiere Pro, Final Cut, those are great. Obviously, pro level stuff. High level of learning curve there.
Yep.
iMovie's great though. iMovie will work good on a Mac. It'll work good on your phone.
And you mentioned Adobe Express earlier.
Adobe Express does really good stuff too. Yeah. But there's all kinds of different video editing tools that make it.
My 12-year-old uses a thing called CapCut and
that's another big
cuts
one.
together a bunch of them. And she doesn't have a computer. She just uses, at this time, actually it was an old iPod. Like,
I know we use Opus. That's another tool that we use for kind of clipping things down a little bit.
what are some things in editing that you do? Are there some, like, do you have some tips and tricks that, like, are things that you like to think of when you go through and editing things?
Keep it really concise. You can refine the edit of a video by just clipping out the first half second of somebody ending a sentence or starting a sentence or making a funny noise and then going into a word kind of a thing.
It has such an impact on how it's perceived.
Be aware of that when you're editing, is that you got to look for those moments when, even if it doesn't feel like gold, if it's the only time that that certain subject matter was mentioned or something like that, look back to where, just try to cut that little nugget as best as possible.
Are you ruthless with your editing, do you think? Is that a word that you kind of keep in mind when you get in there? Well, it all has to be towards the message and the goal of the thing, right?
And if people start talking and then they keep going and then they talk for 5 more minutes and then they talk another 2 minutes.
Yep.
There's also funny effects that we experience all the time on this podcast, because it's just human nature. Is you'll ask me a question, I'll ask you a question, and I think we're getting better at it. But a lot of people, that's how they'll begin every answer to every question. So beware of that. You can try to mitigate it. Good luck.
If you know this is going to be more social media focused, you're probably going to be leaning more towards the portrait type orientation.
Yeah. Yeah. If you're trying to repurpose and you've shot it horizontally and then you want to make it vertical, you need to make sure that you're going into the shoot with that idea.
Yeah.
and understand that you can change the edit and move the subject matter into the center. But if that subject matter moves, it looks weird, it's not natural, and it does create kind of an odd challenge to try to make that look right.
What's going to be more forgiving when it comes to composition? Is it going to be better to capture horizontally and just know that you're not taking up the full vertical space? Or is it easier to go from vertical and then cut down to a horizontal for?
Yeah, that's the tough one, is to go from vertical to horizontal for sure. I would recommend shooting everything or horizontally and then edit down to that. If you
So when in doubt,
yeah,
stick with the horizontal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When we're creating, we're always trying to think flexibility, multiple uses, multiple edits. Sometimes it's a unique situation which you will never recreate. Maybe it's a process, or it's somebody saying a certain combination of words that's just like, oh, nailed it. You know, that's perfect. You got to look at those opportunities sometimes as just gold. Shooting in a unique situation that's really going to help tell your story. Make sure that it's as flexible and as evergreen and as available to as many platforms, or editable to as many platforms as possible, because strong content is like gold. And if you can't optimize it for many, many different types of distribution channels, then it kind of limits you, and it's frustrating. When we're doing interviews, it's nice to be able to ask the question, have them answer it, go back, shoot it again, maybe 4 or 5 times. By that 5th or 6th time, they've kind of nailed it. You know? And
I thought it might be fun to talk about maybe just a little bit of behind the scenes, because we've talked about behind the scenes stuff a little bit here. What'd you do to set this up?
First, I think we strategized what would be the best space that we could just carve out and say it's permanently going to be our set. So having a permanent set is awesome. But getting this right was a lot of research around look and feel. Did we want a light set? Did we want a dark set? How did we want to do it? The best way that I've had success in the past when I shoot photos or videos is to start and remove everything. So start with just a black room with nothing, and then build in the things that you want to have with it. The first thing you need to consider is, where are people going to be? And you remember the first version of it was just one couch where we're both sitting on the couch talking to each other sideways.
If you had to give that aesthetic a name, what would you have given that aesthetic?
Bachelor pad basement. In collaboration, it was nice to kind of choose, like, oh, we've got some nice cloth textures that are bright and colorful. And so filling the space with these elements, I think, was really helpful. And we wanted to kind of have this, you know, the chair was the authority and the funky was the orange couch. And so that was where things started. But then we started to add in things like patterns and natural elements, because we didn't want it super structured around, like, going back to the bachelor pad vision. Then we started to look at the plants, and then this wonderful element here, which you picked out, which I thought added to that kind of 70s, mid-century kind of vibe we're kind of going for. And,
talk show type feel,
those kind of funny Lawrence Welk set.
To let everybody know, there's 2 gigantic lights above us right here to make sure. And so those are providing downward light, which is flattering, which is more flattering and everything. We talked earlier about the hair lights so there's one back here, you've got one back there that helps provide that separation between the background. But then the composition here, you talked about trying to get the cameras lined up. And just to point out, we've got 3 cameras. We got one here, one there, and then Eric's on the other one, right? And so that gives you options. But you intentionally place those in different places to allow for more pleasing cuts between the different cameras.
What really helps is to develop this space to where you can have a little bit of depth in there. The lighting needs its own space. You can't have lighting right up against something, because then it just blasts it out. So that, I think, was one of the next challenges, was trying to place the lighting strategically so that it accented what we were doing but didn't become part of the set. So you've got a ring light behind you there that lights up this area right around your head and face, that kind of gives you that accent, so that when this camera cuts to you, you've got a really nice lighting and everything kind of seems to fit right. And you've got the hair light that separates you on the back. we've got about 2 feet behind each
Yeah.
piece of furniture here that gives us that separation. If we had a bigger space, I'd have even more room.
Yeah.
I'd even push these further out so that you've got the depth and breaking down, and you've got darkness that is a little bit more dramatic. We did like these dark blue because blue pops warm flesh tones off of the background better than any color out there. So you don't focus on the background because the flesh tones of our faces are popped off of those backgrounds in a nice way.
And it was a lucky coincidence that we already had this room painted a dark blue.
Yeah, this is Page Design Blue. So,
Yeah.
Then there was adding the organic elements and making sure that those were lit properly so that they didn't become what I like to call rock stars.
Yeah.
You know, you don't want the rock stars are us.
Yep.
Or our guests.
Damn straight.
That not the plants.
Yeah.
But the plants are nice because that's another organic element that
helps soften
provides
things, right?
Soften things and doesn't provide this like harsh like prison cell atmosphere. They're all fake. It's all plastic.
Yeah.
And then
tell me about these things. Like maybe people don't even know it's because it's
like
so small.
Easter egg element in there. Well, Mike, you have this collection of old type, which this is old lead type from old printing presses and things like that. We've got a huge collection of that in a case behind us. And so I pulled out, because it's the Crying Couch, the words "I'm crying," and I've spelled that out here because we do a lot of crying.
We do.
Yeah. Even offset, we'll do a lot of crying.
Yeah,
or when this is all shut down, we'll just come in here and cry.
Yep.
And then of course the salt lamp, because we just need positive vibes.
Because we put a lot of the work up front, and you talked about the process and honing that process. The doing regular videos for us hasn't become like super daunting or super challenging, right? Like
highlight of my week too, Mike.
If they wanted to do this,
So,
and how much time could people expect if they wanted to do something similar to what we're doing?
We record sometimes up to 2 hours of footage. Everything comes off the capture cards and goes into Premiere Pro. That's the platform that I use for editing all the video. We record all of our audio on Audition, and we bring all those files in, and Premiere Pro syncs them all together in one big long file. There's other platforms. I know that OBS is one I think that's a free platform where you can do multi-camera shoots and things like that. But basically, when it's in the editing bay inside of Premiere, and then I just sit there and let the video play and switch back from camera to camera, clip out all the stuff that doesn't make any sense. We developed an intro and an outro animation thanks to our team. We have licensed music that we bought from Adobe that is our intro and outro music.
Yeah, like how long are you editing?
This takes about
average?
6 hours to put together one episode.
Yeah.
And that's everything. So I'll go through it 2 and then maybe a third time and then post it for everybody else to look at. Sometimes there's some refinements, or here's one intro, here's another intro. Let's try different intros.
We know this isn't a quick hit thing that you're just going to consume and move on. You know, if that was the case, we probably wouldn't be spending nearly as long on all of these production things.
We're doing video and audio.
What I'm hearing from you is it's about 8 hours 2 hours of recording, 6 hours of editing, right? So if you're writing ebooks, if you're doing all these things, like, it's pretty even. So it doesn't have to be as intimidating.
Again, set up the system, right? Get practice in the system. And luckily I had enough time to do that and build the system early on to where I knew the focus needed to be build a system around.
Yeah.
So if you have that passion for creating video, definitely turn that into, maybe that's what will make you a unique marketer, is the fact that your passion for producing videos on whatever platform and whatever format,
it shows.
Get that energy
that comes through.
Yeah, that's what's so great about it. It's harder to get it into a blog or an ebook or something like that. It seems like there's just less friction to get that kind of cool, positive energy where people can connect with you and your brand super easily through video, right?
Yeah.
So,
all right, I'm sold.
You're a new video guy. So
I'm gonna start creating video,
making videos. Cool.
Me washing my car on the weekend. People want to see that?
There's whole channels dedicated to it, believe it or not.
No, I know, but those are for the people who know what they're doing. Do they want to watch people who don't know what they're doing?
I think that would be a funny thing to see how you mess things up all the time.
There's a lot of cursing and hitting your head on things and
bonking.
Yeah, a lot.
Then you just add in noise sound effects.
Oh my God. Thanks, Eric.
Thanks a lot. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. For more information and other episodes, subscribe to the Marketing Team of One podcast on YouTube, Apple, or Spotify podcast networks. You can also chat with us on the r/Marketing Team of One subreddit or visit marketingteamofone.com to learn more.